Red means stop.
The old adage is divide and conquer, but in post-war liberal democratic societies, that isn't quite true. The more accurate motto should be unite and conquer, as constitutional liberalism requires a steady sense of overlapping consensus in order to function governmentally day to day. This means using all opportunities to try and take existing divisions in society and find the middle ground, as it were. Not the literal middle, as some mistake it for, but taking two sides and reconciling any violence that might pour between by getting both sides to agree on a set of standards. For example, the middle ground between a Klansman and BLM protester isn't half racism, half social justice, but rather the idea that despite our differences, it's important to remember that everyone should fight for their cause through the proper channels of expertise and elections. Therefore, both the Klan and BLM are permitted to exist until one of them attempts to engage in actions that go beyond these agreed upon parameters. Always remember, it's okay to disagree so long as you agree to disagree when voting day comes around. You might say, but wait, liberal society is dividing and conquering by creating an enemy out of MAGA. Well, the point of the division here isn't polarization, but actually depolarization, as they attempt to get people to recognize MAGA as creating too many irreconcilable differences, as caused by Trump breaking up institutions of the liberal order, and by voting Trump out, they can get people recomfortable with the previous state of normalcy. Reasserting them as only seasonally political but always evergreen consumers, who will conduct civic duty around election season, becoming temporarily mobilized and politicized, only to be quickly demobilized and depoliticized when that election season ends, leaving it to the state to carve out those actors and differences deemed too hostile to an overlapping consensus, hence re-facilitating the modus vivendi. Actually it's pronounced modus vivendi. The pluralism of a quote-unquote free society, as multiple curated coverings create a sense of freedom. Ideological terms like liberalism and conservatism are de-ideologized into placeholder names for set up policies, rather than grand specific visions of finding a more satisfying culture, precisely because the matter of such high-order ideals is displaced from the people into the laps of national and international trustee bodies to deal with directly. Civic space allows spontaneous mass energies in these societies, but this ideology of policy is one of its many guardrails to channel and funnel them into institutionalization to be remolded toward defending the larger system itself, while allowing some changes insofar as they do not disturb the rule-based order or technocratic economic schemes. The elites want us divided, they don't want us to come together, is a similar phrase that usually follows the divide and conquer adage, but that doesn't really make much sense given that these elites don't want a polarized and heavy politicized populace. That would make it so the populace can't come together to follow instructions and regularly engage in predictable habits if they're all fighting each other, which would lead to social destabilization and interfere with any attempts at proper social engineering. In fact, polarization often leads to people coming to the conclusion of threatening and outright violently attacking elites. So no, the elites here do want you to come together, but in a very specific manner to maintain the political order. But they want a one-world government to turn us all into sheep. You can turn people into sheep without resorting to creating a single centralized entity to do it through. The way mind control works in these societies is through a transparency of multiplicity, but obscurity of clarity, where there are many competing firms, think tanks, multinational corporations, bureaucratic boards, and so on, which follow a shared set of parameters like those mandated citizens, but their goal is to guide participation rather than directly being the participants. A cleavage appears where these entities act autonomously and often in conflict with one another on how to pitch wider political rhetoric, overall campaign styles, and economic follow-through. There is a revolving door of campaign advisors, institutional chairmen, and social engineering organizations, with some mainstays who last longer than others. So it is all clearly a multiplicity in this plurality of moving parts. Still, the specifics become easily obscured as people try to find a grip on it by resorting to simplifications of saying one specific institution or group is the leader of the others, when really even the biggest institutions within the system can't and don't want to be the sole responsible actor of it. Precisely because this system works off the fact that it can appear everywhere all at once by allowing for the existence of these various institutionalized entities who can take on various forms as they spread apart from one another to then all manage society from all sorts of different angles. So adversity is their strength? Manageable adversity is, so long as it can translate into reinforcing the backbone of social harmony. Most social divisions aren't so much made by elites, just how people come to express them and ways to resolve them. Like, for instance, trans and anti-trans issues are real, authentic, and organic. Despite many on both sides trying to pitch the other's wholly elitist, people can be transphobic on their own and be trans on their own without them having to turn the freaking frogs gay or turn the freaking frogs homophobic. It's actually precisely because this division is so real that it needs to be advised so heavily by these social engineers. And so you get policies like, well, we're gonna help trans people in the workplace by making them feel welcome so they can get back to work. Or we will demonize trans people so that those who are transphobic can get back to work. Trans people and transphobes are each other's natural antagonists, and if you are far left and far right, the solution is typically to recognize this and advocate the obliteration of one over the other. This real rivalry, however, is reduced to lame platitudes about getting along for the greater goal of epic policy. So what is the solution? Well, since this is an anarchist channel, it's going to be predictable. In fact, the nudge beings have assessed this outcome with 90% clarity despite their attempts to push beings' behavior into more acceptable parameters. That is the obliteration of overlapping consensus, and despite the odd calls of others on the far left. Also the obliteration of the friend-enemy distinction, which would see a creation of a governmental order premised on the civic space defined by open antagonism of one homogeneous group against the other. Instead, being seeks the anarchist solution to trans and all other alienations towards a type of resolution of historical conflict which would see trans and all peoples freely associated in epic gay communism, achieving not only the end of their rivalry, but also the end of all governmental orders, and seeing transphobes vaporized by epic rhetorical skills that change hearts and minds, and totally doesn't involve any kind of violence at all, because violence is bad. Thanks for watching. Check out the videos listed in the description for more info on liberalism and political ideology. Also check out Being in Piper's podcast. And always remember that no matter our differences, we can agree to disagree to subscribe and like the video. And also comment. Employee attitudes. We don't expect our staff members to come to work with a "I'm just here for the money" mindset. There is literally no other reason why we'd be here.
Worker dissatisfaction detected. Activating the performance management compliance team.